The Legacy of Wisdom project gathers and publishes answers to many of humanity's most pressing questions from some of our most experienced and profound leaders.
Do you have any recommendations for dealing with your family members, how you can help them to help you or support you in your process?
Well, discussion, can certainly, if you are able to bring it to the open and discuss it, that could take you a little in that direction. If it's, if it's something like children and so on, who are in a stage where they can do some inner work, that would certainly help. Psychedelics are not very practical these days, but certainly there are powerful experiential techniques where people can look at some of their own issues, and to the extent to which they would solve it for themselves, they would probably be in a much better position to approach the loss of people who are close. We have heard a number of times, we have a training for people, for practitioners of holotropic breathwork, where people have quite a few experiences themselves as part of the training, and we have heard repeatedly how it helped them to be with their dying parents, just to be there and sitting and not trying to do, just sort of honor the process which is unfolding, which you have to do in psychedelic sessions and which you have to do in holotropic breathwork. Yeah. So that certainly would be one of the ways of helping that situation. There's something closely related to this, that in Tibet, part of the training of the monks is also spending some time sitting with people who are dying, which in itself can help your own spirituality.
There's a way to use technology and media to help families better support people who are going through this.
Well, I think there would be, and again, in my experience, there are limits to what you can do with words, as compared to what you can do when people have personal experiences, including religion. I don't sort of trust very much religion that's communicated in words. Then you go and listen to somebody sort of, giving a speech or reading something from a sacred text, as compared to creating context for people to have their personal experience and giving them support. And we are sort of unfortunately in a situation where if in today's church somebody would have a powerful spiritual experience, which can be quite active, your average priest would probably call the ambulance and think that this kind of thing doesn't belong to the church, that they should see a psychiatrist. I don't know if you've seen the movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, when St. Francis of Assisi has this powerful spiritual experience in church. What happens? Yeah, you see, what would help? And certainly you could do programs that would help, but there would be limits to it. But where the media could really help is to just promote this whole transpersonal movement somehow. Unfortunately, if they call, like some kind of the authorities who hold the chairs in the universities, they would say, "Oh, transpersonal psychology, bullshit," irrational, unscientific, and so on. So, to the extent to which the judgment rests on people who are in traditional kind of mainstream psychology, psychiatry, this is not very likely to happen.
I had a conversation with Father Keating about stopping time. That in the process of meditation or contemplative prayer or any technique you use, when you come to this point, you come to what you described earlier as this empty place that's pregnant, as if you could do anything at that particular point. You feel connected, but it's empty. Is this the kind of thing that in the process towards the end that you could try to communicate to other people?
Again, it's it seems like could be, you know, very easy thing to do because it's emptiness, but it's actually one of the most profound, if not the most profound experience. It's not easily available. It's not just emptying your mind that you might try to do in, you know, vipassana. It's a kind of experience of its own kind that I would have some questions whether you can sort of tell people, you know, get into that empty place. And, well, we did, you know, we had a very large study, over 200 people dying of cancer, the terminal cancer patients, when I was at the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center. And it's about 1/3 of the book which I wrote called The Ultimate Journey. It's the whole study is described there, and Laura Huxley allowed me to use as an appendix an episode from her book, The Timeless Moment, where she describes the death of Huxley under LSD and so on. So we had this large study where we saw the impact of these experiences, you know, that they can have on the fear of death and so on.